Hello and welcome to Good Things, the show about good things. On this week's show we're going to be talking about both our top 10 80s horror movies from the 80s. If you like the 80s, you might like this and the other 80s things. So yeah, stay tuned. Here the category anyway. We're joined today by our cat and our dog, which they're probably going to start. There we go. Start acting the assholes now in a few minutes, and we're going to have to pause the podcast and throw the two of them out, and then feel guilty because we're after throwing the two of them out.
And then let them back in again, and so on and so forth, and rinse and repeat. So, this week it's spooky season. So for the next, I suppose, 4, maybe 5 weeks, let me see, 80s, 90s, 2000s, 2010s. And 2020s if you want.
Well,
we only have half a decade so far.
So maybe, over the next couple of weeks, on the run up to Halloween anyway, we're going to be covering each decade of horror movies. We could have done the 70s, but we're 80s kids, so...
Yeah, we're missing a lot of good stuff from the 70s though, in fairness.
Like what?
Like the first Halloween. Yeah,
there was the first, that was 78,
like
77.
The first Amityville Horror.
Yeah, I don't. That doesn't really hold. Yeah, I'd like to do. It terrified me when I was younger.
You've got other stuff as well that are not quite horror films, but they are terrifying. Like Terror and Inferno from the 70s.
Oh yeah, you were really scared by that.
I know. Yeah, or Jewel.
Yeah, The Exorcist.
Yeah, you've got all those great
Jaws.
70s. So why haven't we started in the 70s?
I couldn't be bothered. And as well, it's 4 weeks. The 80s, I think, all right, there's some, I think this is a thing, people will always say, well, not people, but you get a certain person, probably around our age, that'll go, maybe a bit younger, that'll go, the 80s were best for horror movies. And then people that are a bit older, the 70s were best for horror films. And
Rosemary's Baby.
Yeah, I don't really like Rosemary, The Omen.
So you're listening.
I know, but there's
horrors.
There's great, but they're not. Yeah, but it's we're starting from the 80s because that's our generation, and as well, a lot of people will. The 80s always goes down as being the best, and then people shit on the 90s a lot because they're saying, "Oh, the horror movies went to that." And 2000s people aren't too hot on. Then 2010 onwards, there's the 2010s onwards. Then I suppose you had the rise of A24 and all those where it was what did people call it? The kind of oh Christ, I can't think of it. Elevated horror, which I think is a bit of an insult to other horror movies, as if horror isn't elevated. Because you did the 70s. I think there was a lot of what would now be considered elevated horror, folk horror movies, like The Wicker Man and shit like that. But that was going on in the 80s as well, just because the 80s I think was prime time for gore.
Yeah.
And as well,
I don't think it was prime time for gore. We had all the fucking basically it was the gore porn stuff, like Hostel and all the rest.
That was torture. That was more kind of trying to be gritty. The 80s you had with special effects.
Yeah, I suppose.
Practical special effects. There was a lot of kind of I suppose breakthroughs in the 80s, or things became more available, like latex, and then people started getting handier at it. But I do think it was it's Rob Boutin when he was doing the thing, he nearly pushed the whole thing about Christ, I can't think of the word for it, but it'd be basically having balloons filled with stuff underneath people so you could swell things out. They use it in the transformation scene in American Werewolf in London, where it made it look like the skin was bubbling and stuff.
Yeah.
So you had a lot of these things which were kind of breakthroughs, and Tom Savini would have pushed a lot of it, I suppose, in the 70s. 70s as well. You would have had Day of the Dead or Dawn of the Dead. But right, I suppose, look, I was going to start it with a bunch of fucking, sorry, my brain is destroyed. If there's people that are following this podcast, my brain is destroyed. But I was going to give shout outs, kind of ones that didn't make the list.
Yeah.
But I think we'll do it afterwards, because I'm after seeing your list and there's some of them that were in. We have very different lists.
Do we? I haven't seen yours yet.
Yeah. But we'll get started with number 10.
I see, I haven't put an order on. And also some of mine I picked because I knew you'd pick some of the ones that I quite like as well.
Well, let's start with number 10. What's your number 10?
I suppose
suppose I'll put down. Okay, right. I'll start off by saying I like a lot of comedy horror as well. Or horror that could be a little bit sort of like that. So I'll throw The Burbs out as number 10.
Number 10. And that was, I would never have even considered it. I totally forgot about The Burbs.
Did you?
Yeah, why do you like The Burbs so much?
Well, I suppose it helps. It's nostalgia helps a lot as well. This is going to sound like a really weird thing, but how I ended up seeing The Burbs was there was a cycling summer camp held. Sean Kelly would have been a local sort of a hero born locally, and there was a Sidona cyclers weekend.
Sidona is an apple drink.
Yes, exactly. But it would have been a cycling camp where basically we all turned up and just cycled for miles every single day, and then as our treat at the end of the week we're all brought to the local cinema, and The Burbs is the film we went to see.
Just on the thing of Sean Kelly, he was a cyclist. He was sponsored by Sedona.
Sedona.
What was his name? Stephen Roach, who was sponsored by Calvita cheese.
That's it. Yes. It wasn't his nemesis. It was just another Irish cyclist that happened to be coming up.
Oh, they didn't get along at all.
Did they not?
No, Stephen Roach wanted that tasty Sidona money. All he got was the crummy Calvita cheese that no one liked.
Everyone likes Sidona. For anyone who doesn't know, it's basically like non-alcoholic cider.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's very sidetracky. But it was a totally different experience for me, because being an only child and suddenly going to the cinema with like fucking 300 other like raucous children that were all in the same group I was in. It was like
there's 300 of you.
Jesus, it was all age ranges. Like it was from teenagers.
If you forget it was in the 80s in Ireland where everyone had like about 50 people in a family. Like,
and there was nothing else to do, so all the kids are basically packed off to this. Well, the ones who actually were fancy enough to have a bicycle, you know yourself, and they weren't sharing it between like 3 of them because everyone was so poor. But so that was my experience of like.
And do you want to explain to people what The Burbs is? Because I'm sure there's a lot of people that probably might never have heard of The Burbs.
That's it. And again, Tom Hanks obviously was riding high on sort of being the big star of the 80s.
Tom Hanks isn't in it. That's got what? No, never mind.
Fucking hell. You just totally confused me there for a minute. But it was just like, I was not expecting it to be what it was at all, which helped as well. I think a lot of the 80s films going into
the plot. Just give people the plot.
That's the thing. I'm getting around to it. Give me time. I need to build up. That's it. But a lot of people went into movies not knowing what the fuck was going on. I went into the this podcast. I went into this not thinking it was a horror at all. I thought it was some like goofy fucking boring adult film, because it was like about the suburbs, and I was like, I don't want to go and see that.
Well, the marketing for it was making it out to be very much a horror, so you weren't aware of The Burbs.
No, not aware of it at all. No. So I went in and my mind was blown, because I thought it was going to be some dull fucking thing for adults, and all of a sudden it was like all this fucking intrigue about like they thought there was like cult killers actually moving in next door.
They thought, and it turned out kind of like for people. Well, without ruining it, I suppose actually I won't say anything about it, but it was kind of a cross between a kind of a Hitchcockian kind of like a fucking rear view window or whatever it was, like that this guy, they were stalking their neighbours trying to look out at night, and they saw him like digging up graves or something in the back garden. So it's just like this sort of coming together of like these local suburban kind of weirdos. Corey Feldman was in it as well. What you thought weirdos? Did you say Corey Feldman?
It was just because there was a couple of adults, and then like he was like the younger kid.
It was with Corey Feldman as well. Like people should. I imagine everyone listening to this podcast will know who Corey Feldman was. Yes. But like obviously in the 80s he was like that kind of like cute kid that was like in like a lot of Spielberg stuff, and like he was in a ton of stuff. But this would have been him transitioning into adult acting, so he was
kind of late teenage, early 20s. But he was like the kind of the teenager of the film, with all these like grown adults who had their own children and stuff like that. So he was sort of the audience's way in, possibly the younger audiences.
Well, it was very much so as being a Tom Hanks movie, because Tom Hanks was massive. This probably would have been after Big and
so it was
Splash.
It was like slapstick horror kind of a thing, I suppose.
Yeah, it's been a while since I've seen it. I can't remember. I'm never really a fan of it. Like anytime I've seen it, I kind of went, it's okay, but I'd put it in the same realms as like Dragnet.
I suppose a little bit like that. I think it's a bit more along the lines of, say, not quite Beetlejuice, but kind of getting to that kind of like, it's a little bit wacky and a little bit weird.
I think it was very much trying to appeal to families, but primarily adults, where it was trying to be horror, but not horror, very horror light. Kind of coming into, I suppose, like the 80s, it was like fucking some dark shit going on. This was like very much near the end of the 80s, I suppose, where they started the transition. Yeah. But good choice, I suppose. Yeah. My number 10 would be very different. It's not family friendly, but it does have links to Corey Feldman in it as well. It's Friday the 13th Part 6. Corey Feldman is not in it, but he's character Tommy Jarvis when he was like played Tommy Jarvis, and I suppose the longest running character other than Jason in Friday the 13th. In Part 4, his family and friends got killed, but he survived. He ended up killing Jason by dressing up as like Jason at the end of it. He like shaved his head, and Jason kind of hesitated for a minute, and then he lashed into him with a machete, and then he ended up being institutionalized in a mental home in Part 5, and Jason of course comes back. But Part 6 starts off with Tommy and one of his friends from the mental institution are after breaking out of it, and they're going off to like make sure that Jason is in his grave, and they do a bit of a Frankenstein thing with it, and they
an accidental resurrection.
And then Jason goes about his usual business of killing everyone at Camp Crystal Lake, which is not Camp Crystal Lake anymore. I can't remember what they changed the name of the town to, but I really like, out of all the Friday the 13th films, I think this is probably one of my favourite ones, because like most of the Friday the 13th films would have been in the 80s, so I could have picked
any of them.
The first one is like well loved and seen as like a genuinely good film. Part 2 I think is probably one of the better ones. 3, 4, 5 are kind of duds, I think. And then I think 6 it kind of brings the fun into it, or fun back into, even when you were looking at it there, you see, it starts off with Jason kind of doing a bit of a James Bond style intro thing with it.
It is kind of like, I suppose, sets itself up as being a bit tongue-in-cheek.
Yeah.
It's like, this is not like a serious slasher, this is like something you can laugh along to.
I think that they were kind of in full swing with kind of like, look, people are just here to watch people dying in horrific ways. They had, it reminds me a lot of, say, the Nightmare on Elm Street series, I think, with this. There's a fun to it. I know people shit on this version of Friday the 13th a lot. It's not a lot of people's favourite ones, but I think for people that might be just trying to get into Friday the 13th, that just want to look at a brain dead slasher. And as well, I think the final girl in this is probably one of the better ones out of it. She's not serious, and she can kind of hold her own from the start, and she's kind of that 80s kind of, I'm kind of like a tomboy, kind of like, kind of thing. Or
she's like a tough cookie kind of thing.
Dad is the sheriff. And as well, the guy who plays Tommy in it, he played, he's in Return of the Living Dead too. I'm sorry, fucking mind gone. I'm not going to have a bunch of tabs open to give people details. It's a list fucking thing. Not a detailed breakdown of fucking
cast and crew and
but I think the cast are very good in it. And a lot of the people that were in it, they weren't in much beforehand. They weren't in really much afterwards either. But I think my favourite anyway, and my first entry into her list. So what would be your number 9 then?
Well, I suppose I'm going to get the sort of the comedy horror, I suppose, out of the way first. So I suppose Tremors would probably be the next one.
Tremors at number 9, yeah.
Well, you see, I'm kind of grouping them. As I said, I don't have them rated 1 to 10 like you do. These are just like 10 films I like. So I'm going to group all the comedy horrors together, and then I'll get up to sort of the 1, 2 and 3, and it'll be like the super awesome
I suppose
horrors.
For people who aren't aware, the plot of Tremors, because we won't ask Laura what the name the plot things anymore, because it'll take a half an hour.
3 hours.
But,
well, back in Stickity too.
It's about a group of people that are after getting trapped out. They're following the kind of the Carpenter style thing of people kind of like being holed up, where it's excuses for a minute while we throw the dog out. I know he's going to stay in there. He came in with a fucking giant duck,
a stuffed toy duck, not a real duck.
But
the adventures of dog.
They're after being trapped by these giant sandworms that react to noise, isn't it, or movement
and stuff.
So it's very much like Maximum Overdrive, but with sandworms instead of trucks.
So it's like a cross between that and like Beetlejuice kind of thing. So I was kind of going, right, I'm going to have one film that has worms in it on my list. So rather than Beetlejuice, I said I go for Tremors.
And why?
It's just one of these kind of comedy horrors where like you have these characters who they're cut off from the rest of, they're basically relying on their own sort of savvy and hijinks and ability to use guns and like lose their minds and do stupid shit. And you've got Emilio Estevez, you've got...
No, Emilio Estevez isn't. You're thinking of fucking Paxton Overdrive. It's Kevin Bacon.
Sorry.
And Fred Ward. Either Fred or Bill Ward, the guy who was in Remo on Ireland.
Sorry, that's the same kind of character, though, if you know what I mean. It's like, it's the guy wearing like the tight blue jeans and he's the hero and he gets the girl.
But they're kind of more fuck-ups in this, the two of them. They're getting ready to leave town and they come across a seismologist or a biologist or some scientist who's... There's something going on,
Bollocks.
And I think the dad from Family Ties is in it as well, and as a big hunter guy.
Yeah.
It's the characters are fun in it. It's a fun movie.
It is. It's super fun, but it is quite terrifying at the same time. Like especially I suppose for a younger child who's like used to seeing a country child.
Well,
who's
it's
used
spawned
to
about I think 8 or 9 sequels to it. It's a good monster thing. I think it was it was high end as well at the time. I think people were, because like Kevin Bacon would have been a big star at this stage.
Yeah.
So it wasn't really like a straight to video nasty thing or anything like that.
It wasn't even really a video nasty. Like
no, that's what I'm saying. It wasn't like say for the 80s, it was very much kind of like high production values on it. The monsters were cool. I don't think they've changed the monsters too much. But I haven't followed the sequels.
Yeah.
But I think the latest one might have been like with ice worms or something like that. But I think the main character that's continued through was the dad from Family Ties, who ends up being like a badass anyway in it. But I think Tremors is...
Yeah, like as I said, it's something that I hold in fond regard, and it's something that I throw that I go, that's the thing. There's some horrors and you kind of go, they're excellent, they're very good, but I don't feel like watching it again. Yeah. Whereas Tremors, you kind of like, chuck it on.
Well, that's very much the way that I did my list as well. Was I was looking at I wrote down a load of different things. So there's some films that aren't on this that probably would be on it if you're looking at it from a critical point of view. Yeah. But it's just like, you kind of go, I prefer to look at this movie over that movie.
There's plenty of other top 10s out there that list like sort of the critically acclaimed sort of horror films from the 80s, whereas this is something that like if you gave me a list of any of these 10 on a Friday night, I'll go, I'll watch that.
Yeah, I'm the same as well, because being honest, one of the films that would have been in the honourable mentions was going to be it is The American Werewolf in London. I see that's not on your top 10 either.
No.
With it.
Again, I love the film. I think it's great, but it's not something that I kind of go, throw it on again. Like, within, say, 2 months of seeing it.
I think the big thing with that film is the transformation scene. As well, it was a John Landis thing, so it was like comedy horror. It's all right. I've heard other podcasts. There's a podcast I listen to called Pod of the Damned, and they go through that they have like a leaderboard of things, and when they were covering it, they kind of shit on it. Is what they were saying. Like, I appreciate how, but kind of the same way we are, where it's like it hasn't aged well, and as well you look at it a few times and you go, I don't really want to look at it again.
I leave it off for a couple of years before I do a rewatch.
Now there's other werewolf films I think are actually far better. Like, I mean, the transform. But the transformation scene in An American Werewolf in London, and some of the stuff in it, you kind of go, but I don't know. I don't think the character is likable.
Well, that's the thing.
The main character is likable, and when he gets killed at the end of it, you kind of go,
who cares?
So what,
yeah, exactly.
But my number 9 would be not really much of a horror comedy. It's Hellraiser.
Yes, well, you see, again, I knew that you would have some of these kind of on your list, so Hellraiser would have been on my top 10, but I was like, Wayne will surely have it on his. So tell me about Hellraiser.
Hellraiser is based on Clive Barker's The Hellbound Heart, which is about like a group of... I suppose... Yeah. That's what that song was based on. No, it's not. It was written before Heather. But it's a bunch of... They're called Cenobites, which they're basically interdimensional. Maybe interdimensional. But like they're meant to be from hell. Basically, hell monks. That when people call them, they come to take them off. That'd make a good movie, actually. Hell Monkeys. But it's in the film, I think they're posed as being like interdimensional pleasure seekers, and then it gets more into the whole hell aspect of it. after when it goes into the later films. Well, the later films we won't talk about because like most of it's fucking really diminishing returns with the Hellraiser sequels, where they just wanted to. I think it was Canon. I can't remember who owned the rights for a long time.
Kind of they wanted to hold the rights.
They wanted to hold the rights, so they never really.
Yeah,
so they never really did. So it ended up at one point with the sequels where they were getting scripts for other movies, and they were like, "We'll make this, and we can make it really cheap. Just throw fucking Pinhead in it at the end to pop up and go."
That's they used to always just Doug Bradley, wasn't it?
Yeah,
they used to just wheel him out and just like.
Yeah, and then the last couple of ones, there was one. I think it was shot for fucking 10,000 that they kind of just wanted to hold on to.
10,000 fucking peso.
And they got in what we were kind of was like chubby fucking Pinhead. It was like, it was just a desperate film altogether. It was about a group of people in a fucking suburban house, and it didn't go out. And then they tried to reboot it on the one that they did, but the new one is very, very good. With oh god, I can't think of the name of your woman that plays Pinhead in it. But I thought that the reboot of it very, very, very good, and hopefully they'll make more of it. I think that was very true to Clive Barker's version. Of course, Clive Barker directed this one, and it's more about family drama, but with these interdimensional demons,
psycho drama,
and it's really gory. I love it.
It is horrendous, all right. I mean, even the appearance, I suppose, of your hell monks.
I think in the 80s as well, it really brought, because
horrendous
slasher movies were kind of what a lot of people thought of horrors in the 80s, and it was like there were so many rip-offs of Friday the 13th and Halloween, and it just got to the point where we were just like, oh, fucking not another slasher movie. And then like Hellraiser was just it had all the things I think a Nightmare on Elm Street had in it, the serious tone of it, well, not the sequels, but it was like they were genuine, but it was just dark. It was very different. It was nice to see. It
was sinister and gritty and properly terrifying.
Like the design of Pinhead. It's hard that you can't fucking put things back in the box, but seeing Pinhead in the Cenobites for the first time, and even just the glow too, where it was like, and as well, it was very ambiguous because there was only one person in it that wasn't the villain. And like, I mean, the thing was like, are the Cenobites the bad guys, or are they just doing their thing? Like,
doing what they're bidden, like.
You know, because you didn't really know much about him. It was done like, I've never read The Hellbound Heart. Or no, I did. What am I saying? I never read it. I did read it. I read it fucking yonks and yonks ago.
I'm very happy for you.
But I seem to remember it being fairly different. From it. But yeah, that's my number 9.
And it's like, I mean, that's the thing, is to say, like, sort of the first time you would have seen like Pinhead would have been like, oh my god, but he's become so popular now that it's basically like a run-of-the-mill Halloween costume. You can buy him off Amazon and just put on your mask with your Pinhead and your black priest outfit kind of a thing.
And super glue pins to your head.
Yes. Just get the mask with all the pins done. So yeah.
But that's my number. What would be your number 8, Laura?
Okay, so I've done the Burbs, I've done Tremors. I'm going to keep going with the sort of the comedy horror, and we're going to step away from the likes of Hellraiser and go to Gremlins.
Oh, Gremlins, yeah.
Yes, exactly. So a little bit far away from your highbrow, what's your pleasure?
I don't think we need to explain the plot of Gremlins to anyone. I hope not.
Yes, well, I suppose. Little boy goes to a Chinese shop, buys a pet Mogwai.
He doesn't. It's his father.
His dad buys it for him. I'm like, all right. Jesus, fucking, you like.
Fucking hell.
I love the way you're just like, my brain has gone to motion, then you're jumping down my throat.
This is your list. These are meant to be your top 10 precious films from the 80s.
My precious.
Yeah, and you can't even get. What was the dad's name?
I don't know, and I don't give two shits what the dad's name was.
I can't remember.
There you go. But he strict instructions not to feed the Mogwai after 12, not to get him wet, and of course, what do? They feed him and they get him wet, and they see then why they're not supposed to.
There's another rule you're forgetting.
That's the other one. Don't let him sing because he's so cute.
Bright lights.
Oh yeah. Okay, yeah, that's true.
So that's if you got they'd be dead.
My memory.
Yeah. Here, I just take him out of his box and have a look at him under this.
But yeah, basically he multiplies out all these terrible gremlins who do terrible things around. But there's shenanigans ensue, I suppose.
Joe Dante directed it, didn't he? But it's very much a Steven Spielberg movie. It was produced by Spielberg. It has that
It does.
Corey Feldman is in this as well.
What?
Corey Feldman is in this as well.
There's a bit of a running theme there. But like this is essentially a Christmas film as well.
Yeah, and it's a dark Christmas film.
I mean, like, it's sort of for kids that are watching it. It kind of gives away like sort of stuff about Santa, which is horrifying.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, where your woman's going, oh, that's like my dad died. He got stuck in the chimney. Then we got the smell out, and that's how I found out Santa didn't exist. And you're just like, fucking hell.
Yeah, pretty dark, all right.
Well, it has all that, like the classic 80s things of being like the cute kind of Gizmo, and like Gizmo's kind of a badass. Like, I mean, when it gets into when he like dons the Rambo gear,
yes, and he starts like kicking ass. Yeah, of course he's a little.
But like, even though the Gremlins are like awful, they're still kind of cute.
They're hilarious.
Yeah.
That's it. Like,
it's Looney Tunes movie,
exactly,
isn't it?
That's what it is, and it is all these like horrendously outrageous slapstick deaths. Like, I mean, there's Gremlins being microwaved, and there's like people getting killed with toasters and electrocuted, and God knows what.
I can't tell, but the villain woman, well, that's like, she runs the bank. She's a bitch, and when she gets killed by the Gremlins, when they hotwire her stair chair. And it flies out the window. That, when I was a kid, that was like the funniest fucking thing. Every time, yeah. But the thing, that guy, you know, he's like that guy from the movies, Dick. Oh Christ, I can't remember his name, but he was in fucking nearly every Spielberg movie, every Joe Dante movie, every fucking. He was in loads of it, but he always like side thing. Like, he was like always the nice guy, and when he gets killed. See Mr. Feldman or Mr. Felser or something like that, and he goes out, he's like having flashbacks from, like, you know, the war, and he calls them gremlins because he's like, oh, gremlins get into people's planes during the war and stuff. But when they kill him when he goes out, and he ends up killing, they kill him and the wife in the house. They drive the digger, the bulldozer, into the house and crush the two. Oh no, he survives it because he's in part 2.
Make your mind up.
Sorry, Christ. I'm just like playing the movie back in my head.
Fucking hell. And you're like an excited child trying to tell somebody about, and then this happened, and no, hang on, that didn't, no, this is the other thing.
They're meant to be finally doing a third Gremlins movie, because there's a TV series of Gremlins on now. Like, it's actually being on.
Wasn't there a cartoon? Yeah, that's it.
Which apparently is meant to be, I think it's called Secrets of the Mogwai or something like that.
But that's like, I mean, every kid wanted a Mogwai for Christmas, like, back then. So the best you could do was like an actual fluffy toy.
I think they did the Furbies like fucking about 20 years later, where it's like,
you're catering to a totally different generation.
But that's
Gremlins. And again, it's I quite like these films that are both horrors and Christmas films, because I feel like Christmas should be about horror.
Yeah. Well,
why not?
It always was. Like, we could get into that whole thing. Mark Gatiss did a horror. I think there's 3 episodes of it. But one of the whole thing is that there is a tradition of horror at Christmas. Like, you go like fucking the Ebenezer Scrooge with the 3 ghosts. That's a horror movie. Like BBC over in England, every horror movie. They won't show any fucking horror movies at Halloween. But Christmas they come around, and it's like 2 weeks of horror movies. With it. But I suppose moving on to number 8.
For you?
For me it would be Silver Bullet, which has another Corey in it. Corey. No.
Haim?
Yeah.
I was going to leave you dangling for a while, but
Corey Haim, and like another brilliant. He was a child star as well, but another great star.
I'm sure he's going to feature in more films as well on both our lists.
Yeah, definitely. But Gary Busey is in this when he's like mental Gary Busey, but
not later life mental.
We're at Silver Bullet, which is probably one of my favourite werewolf movies. I think I can look at this over and over and over again. Based on Stephen King's short story, Seasons of the Wolf. No, not Seasons of the Wolf.
Oh my god, this is like talking to an Alzheimer's patient.
I know. Phase of the Moon.
Right. Are you sure?
No, I'm not. I can't remember. But I always wanted to get it. It used to be in the book centre when I was younger, and I always
regret. Which is a bookshop, by the way, because people are just going to be like, what is a book centre?
But I always regret not getting it, because it was a picture book. But Cycles of the Moon. That's
Phases of the Moon, Faces of the Moon.
Oh, it's definitely Cycles of the Moon. Cycles of the Stephen Roach. Calvita. Werewolf eating Calvita.
Maybe that's what.
But it's got all the Stephen King stuff there. It's like small town Maine, people kind of hiding dark secrets, and it's like the only one who suspects that a werewolf is killing all these people that are like going missing and their bodies are turning up is Corey Haim, who's like a kid in a wheelchair, and people are like, oh, don't listen to him, like he's in a wheelchair, he's obviously like, you know,
obviously his brain doesn't work as well, like,
and the only one that listens to him is Gary Busey, he's like crazy uncle, and
everyone needs a crazy uncle.
But people figure out about halfway through that there is a wolf killing people, and it's probably a werewolf, and there's a scene where people go off to hunt the werewolf, and it's just fucking, it's brutal. Like, I mean, the werewolf special effects are nowhere near as good as, say, an American Werewolf in London, but they're probably more kind of like old school Universal horror werewolf things, but it like it covers stuff from the werewolf's point of view. And a lot of the time with those things, in the 80s it was fun to have like this tortured character who was a werewolf who didn't really want to do it. They chained themselves up.
I don't want to kill.
But in this, the werewolf is like,
yummy.
No, I'm doing it. I'm like taking out people I don't fucking like. You know, I'm not going to say anything just in case people haven't seen it, but it's...
I love it's like, we're not going to spoil a film that's been out 40 odd years.
Yeah, but it's still, you don't want to be, you'd like, you know, I'm sure we'll cover Silver Bullet in more depth at some stage, but it's, I think when I was younger, it did come as a surprise who the werewolf was. You don't...
It's not, I suppose, signposted overly.
Yeah, it's not. And like, I mean, then when you do discover, about halfway through, I suppose, you figure out who, like, I mean, it's discovered. So then there's a whole thing where it's like, Corey Haim's character is trying to get his shit together before the full moon. So it reminds me, well, Late Phases, I think, had to be influenced by it as well, which is a great horror movie as well. But yeah, that's, I think, do you like Silver Bullet?
Yes, I do. Yes. You see, that's what I was saying, like, there's a lot of films that would be on your list that I went, I'll leave Wayne, take this one, I'll add another one in there. Yes.
But it's a great movie. It's reasonably short. Well, it feels really short. All the characters are relatively likeable in it, apart from one or two. And it's the cat, he doesn't agree with anything at all.
No, he's decided he wants to be a werecat.
Yeah, but I suppose we go on to number 7. I'll go into my number 7.
No, I'm going to my number 7.
Yeah, what's your number 7?
Well, you see, the reason I'm going to go into my number 7 is because I might as well keep going with the Stephen King theme.
Right.
I was going to go with the sort of the true horror one and put down Pet Sematary, so that'll be an honourable mention.
God, I forgot about Pet Sematary.
But, of course, deciding that I only wanted like one Stephen King thing on my list, I had to go with Maximum Overdrive. I had to.
Is it horror though?
Well, I mean, fucking, I don't particularly want fucking trucks running me over the Green Goblin, like fucking and fucking a military fucking gun, fucking whatever it was, tourist shooting at me and all the rest, and being forced to pump gas for like the rest of my life.
Yeah, you might, but is that like horror? I suppose it is.
Getting killed horribly, like Jesus Christ. But yeah, the premise for anyone who doesn't know is meteor passes overhead and somehow affects anything that has like electrics or an engine in it, and they all come to life and they're all incredibly malicious.
Yeah, they decide that it's not like, oh, let's help humanity. It's like, let's kill everything.
Yeah. Exactly, yeah. And there's these, again, a gang of misfits, which we go back to like with my pick of Tremors. You have your sort of your hero in his tight blue jeans and he's sort of like, I'm going to get the girl and I'm going to kill everyone and let's everyone follow me. That's Emilio Estevez. But they all band together out in this and I don't think you find out what he's saying.
People just start calling him hero.
Yeah, that's it, yeah. So it's like, very simple there to remember who he is. But yeah, they band together and these trucks basically circle the truck stop and they basically send in like ransom notes kind of thing, like fill us up with petrol, fuckers. Or
they do it with Morse code. Yeah. Some of my favourite deaths though are the ones that, well, they show it very clearly that someone gets killed by a vending machine that starts shooting cans out and
and it's like proper like horrible dent in their fucking skull.
And it's like, God bless the 80s, like when they quite obviously did not give a fuck about hurting people. It's a kid is running away from it and it's quite clearly someone hurling fucking
absolutely
full cans
a can at the back of the child's head.
It hits him in the back and knocks him on the ground. Like it's like, for there had to be a good bit of weight in it for the speed that it travels.
Yeah, it's like, could we use special effects? Like, nah, just peg a can at the kid, he'll be fine.
I'm sure it's like that in Evil Dead where it's like, oh yeah, there was a real shotgun. We had shotgun shells we didn't know about.
get blanks. But yeah, like, I mean, Maximum Overdrive has all the kind of the horror shtick that you want there as well. You have your group of misfits out in the middle of nowhere. They've aligned themselves. No one else is coming to save them. Man Against Machine, which will feature in another film.
It's very much a zombie movie, but with trucks. And as well, it's like we have an episode about this.
Yeah.
So you can go back and look through. It's probably on the YouTube channel somewhere. But it's Stephen King on his coked up best.
Absolutely.
At the time, people were like, "Oh my god, this!" I think probably critics, but it was like pre-internet, so you didn't really know that everyone really liked it. Like the audience really liked it.
That was the thing. It was like a lot of films were like critically fucking panned, but like they did fantastically well in the box office. So I don't care what some high.
This is really hard to get like to rent out because people were always around now. And there's AC/DC did the soundtrack for it. It's a really good
cool
movie.
And rocking than that. Like, see, that's why, as I said, I was leaning heavily towards Pet Sematary, and I was kind of going, okay, that's terrifying, but if I'm going to have one Stephen King film, it's not going to be Cujo, it's not going to be Pet Sematary. It has to be Maximum Overdrive.
Giancarlo Esposito is in it.
Yes, exactly.
At the start, he gets killed by an arcade. It's not even by an arcade machine.
Yeah.
It's by the arcade
itself. Yeah, it's just honestly there's no logic to it because you kind of go, well, is it electrical equipment or is it equipment that has like a combustion motor engine in it? Is it like, I mean, fucking...
Well, remember they showed there was like when we went back looking at it, I think it was like some director's cut that we saw because there was bits in it that we never saw before, and there was like when the kid was cycling through the neighborhood, I was showing all these people like killed by lawnmowers and shit, but there was like one with a fella hanging out a window and his hand was stuck in a toaster, so the I was like, how did the toaster?
I know, and there was, I think, wasn't there somebody who was killed by their hairdryer as well?
Yeah, that's what it was. Yeah, I think it was a hairdryer in her face or something.
Yeah, after strangling her. But it was an incredibly bizarre choice, really, I suppose.
It is a really good movie. Like it is. I think in time it will be. I think it's a cult classic at the moment with certain groups of people. I think there'll be some reevaluation of it at some point. People will rediscover it. Some fucking big critics will rediscover it and start going on about how great it was.
I know, and then all of a sudden people will be like, oh my god, this soundtrack was proper rock, and it was like great, and it was like actually scored straight for the film, like by AC/DC kind of a thing. And I don't know if this is on your list or not, but I mean, Stephen King obviously had a thing for like vehicles coming to life. Christine.
Oh, Christine. No, I don't have Christine.
All right. Well, you see, there you go. So I was wheeling through all of these in my head, but I was like, no, Maximum Overdrive.
Christine is a great film, but we watched it there a while ago, and like when I was looking at it again, I was like, it's...
I quite enjoy it. It's a bit cheesy.
I don't really like it, but I don't think I'd look at it for another few years. Have it on Blu-ray in there as well. But it's...
But it is...
one of the other films that it's similar, very similar to Christine, but I think is a better film in my opinion, which would be
Herbie the Love Bug.
Yeah. Which would be further up on the thing.
Well, that's so you will see that some of this features again machines basically becoming sentient and killing man.
Yes, but
hints.
My number 7, and it was a choice between this and Day of the Dead. And obviously you didn't pick Day of the Dead for zombie films. I still think Day of the Dead is a great film, but it's not in my top 10. Instead I put like Return of the Living Dead, which I think it has
this is the one with the one in the crematorium, isn't it? Yeah.
To me, it should have changed zombie movies it was like well received at the time, and I think now there's been a load of documentaries of people singing its praises, but it kind of like as a franchise it died a death.
I don't think this one is very well regarded, even though like it was very 80s and bombastic.
No, I think it was because
lots of boobs in it.
It's horrendously violent. Is the thing, like, whereas, and it's not fucking like zombies fucking shambling around. It's like zombies can talk in it, they're fast, they're vicious,
they're funny.
They're funny. It's a kind of a piss take of Return of the Living Dead. The main characters in are a group of punks, so it's not like what would have been traditionally seen as like heroes in films or people that you can relate to. So I think would have related to people my age and obviously older than me, like teenagers, I think.
Yeah, because they're the outcasts and the misfits, and they're the ones that aren't the upstanding sort of members of the community. Yeah,
it's incredibly bleak as well. There's no getting away from this. And like the ending to it, there's actually a sequel to it, like direct sequel to this, comic. Because like it ends with a nuclear bomb basically, so you kind of go, oh fuck, everyone's, and then kind of from the smoke it looks as if alright, the whole world is going to be affected. But then they did like part 2. I really liked part 2 when I was a kid, but it's a terrible movie. It doesn't hold up. Part 3 is really good. It was directed by Brian Usna, who Reanimator fame.
Yeah.
That's another movie that could have been in here, Reanimator.
I was full sure you were going to have it on your list, so I didn't include it on mine.
Yeah, I don't know what I could take out to put Reanimator in. Like I love Reanimator. I really like Reanimator, but at the same point, I think Reanimator. These films are just better than Reanimator. Reanimator, I can only look at it every 5 years, maybe, or just like I love it. I think it's great, but it's just not in the top 10 for me at all. But Return of the Living Dead, I think probably one of the best zombie movies in existence. Soundtrack, fucking brilliant. Punk soundtrack from the 80s.
Yeah.
It's brutal. Brutal movie.
And it is like, I mean, we've watched a couple of making of as well. Yeah. And like a lot of the people that would have been involved, they really enjoyed their time on it as well, didn't they? It
was a really young cast on it.
And it was a lot of sort of taking a punt on the unknown kind of thing. It would have been their first acting gig, or sort of they just.
And then like Clu Gallagher is in it as well, who would be well known horror. So he's brilliant in it as like the head of the factory. But it just took all the tropes of zombie movies where it's like you have to destroy and fucking get rid of them at the start. Like when people get turned into zombie, like when the zombie breaks out and they're like trying to deal with it, and they're like, oh, and in the movie they said like destroy its brain, and they go for the brain and it's still alive, and then they cut it up into little pieces and it's still alive. So it kind of nearly answered all those like fan questions that people would have been talking about in the 80s, where it's like, oh, like if you were kind of like trapped, like surrounded by someone, where would you hide, what would you do? And in this, it kind of like all those things, normal kind of, it's like they split up the group and they put them in different situations where it's like, oh, if you hid up in the attic you'd be safe, or oh, if you keep moving you'd be safe. And it's like you're fucked. There's no safeness to it at all, and the effects are brilliant in it. They're probably some of the best zombie movie effects. They're scary zombies, but they're cool as well. You kind of look like the Tar Man. That's horrendous actually.
And as far as I remember, there was a fairly decent soundtrack with that as well.
Soundtrack is brilliant. That's what I was saying. The soundtrack is really good. Like the Damned are on it. Fucking Rocky Erickson is on it. It's just it's a brilliant film. It was written by Dan O'Bannon as well. I can't remember who directed it. Might have been Dan O'Bannon who directed it. But so that's my number 7. What would be your number 6?
This is getting hard to try and rate them all, I suppose, really. So I might go with the Owl. Let me see. I know one of them is going to be on your list as well. I might start going with the old body horror ones. So let's throw The Fly in.
Fly, as in the remake of The Fly.
As in, yes, the Jeff Goldblum Brundle Fly. Seth Brundle. So yeah, that was a film that profoundly fucking scarred me when I was a child. Haven't seen that because it is quite gross and disgusting. I suppose again a quick recap of that. He's this absolutely bursting with brain scientist, and he's trying to sort out like teleportation. So he's got his 2 teleportation pods, and they're all like, no, you can't experiment on people, this is terrible. So he's like, oh, I'll do it on myself. So, and he hops in, but unfortunately a normal housefly also hops in with him, and their DNA and their genetics get mixed up, and he comes out the other side as half man, half fly, and gradually turns into a fly, I suppose, where the fly starts getting dominant. So it is, again, it's just this horrible body horror where he's like, his fingernails start coming off, his teeth start coming out, he starts getting these like fly like kind of like hard bristly hairs poking out through his skin. Suddenly he can't fucking eat food like a normal human, he has to do it like a fly, so you're like, bleh.
It's when his fingernails come off.
I just said that.
Oh yeah, sorry. Sorry, I was looking at your list. I was trying to, because you have an extra one. You have 11, not 10.
I know I do. Yes. There you go.
But it's disgusting. Like it's
horrendous. It's a terrible body horror, and it's Gina Davis, isn't it?
Gina Davis as well.
And like she just goes through a terrible time as well, because he basically, while she was going out of them while he was still like Seth Goldblum and like normal looking human man, and it turns out then that she's like sort of pregnant with his larva, never mind his baby and everything, and it's fucking, it's just, the whole thing is horrendous.
It's sad. It's like, it is proper tragic, because you do like Seth Brundle.
Yes, he comes across as a likeable guy.
Yeah, he is nice. He's like trying to benefit you, and then he just
disintegrates literally.
Yeah, it's basically like people were saying at the time that it was meant to be an analogy for cancer, and I remember seeing an interview with Cronenberg. He was like, no, or AIDS. That's what they were saying, because everyone wanted to throw fucking every, and he was like, no, it's not. It's just like a tragedy about this guy like disintegrating. Like,
and I suppose a special shout out then as well to, I don't know, was it The Fly 2 or 3, but that again had a profound effect on me, because
the 2 was awful.
It was the Inside Out dog. Do you remember that?
Was that, you sure that wasn't in one? No, it was a baboon in the first one.
Yeah, no, it was a dog. He sent his pet dog through it basically, and the poor dog turned inside out, and he was trying to keep it alive in this terrible pit, and it was just like this horrendous.
No,
like
2 is terrible though. It's Eric Stoltz is the son of the fly in it. It's dreadful. Like,
no, the film is dreadful. But it's just, I was very upset about the poor dog being turned inside out. I was just like, oh.
But the Fly is proper. It's like
proper body.
I think it won a lot of awards as well. It got might have got nominated for Oscars as well. But the music to it is great. Like, it's directed obviously Cronenberg. It would be now, I think, what would be considered elevated horror without a shadow of a doubt.
And Jeff Goldblum as well at the time. It was before he was proper, like, sort of 100% eccentric, Jeff Goldblum, but he was still fairly eccentric in this. Like, he was very believable as this distracted, fantastic mind of a scientist kind of thing, where all he was trying to do was like, oh my god, this would be fantastic if I could, further science and benefit humanity, and then it's just like, bleh, I'm a fly.
And it like, it is it's just like, I keep saying the tragedy, but it is so sad, because you're not like, I don't know, you're not like rooting against him until the very end, where you're like, just Jesus Christ, this is, and even then when it goes horrifically wrong, when you kind of go, fucking, it's just, it's a great movie. It's a fantastic film. Like,
but there's that.
Yeah, well, my number 6 would be similarly, I think, dark, and probably one of John Carpenter's best movies. One of them, now, not his best, but one of them is Prince of Darkness.
Alright, okay.
I think it's just even for the time, it was such a weird fucking movie. It like brings all the Carpenter's elements together, where it's like a group of people trapped in an area that they can't get out of, kind of like Rio Bravo, but like it's got this interdimensional demon thing that may or may not be Satan, but it's like green fluid trapped in this church. It's nearly Lovecraftian to a thing, and there's a lot of sci-fi elements in it. Well, kind of science. It's like someone trying to understand kind of fate, or kind of like demons through kind of like true science. It's just, I think it's still fairly scary. Alice Cooper is in it.
Scary as.
There's bits when people get possessed by things, and the changes in them. They're like, there's a black dude in it, and when he ends up he just kind of keeps laughing, but it's just so sinister.
Yeah, it is. It's very unsettling and disconcerting. Like,
whereas you wouldn't think it would be. There's bits in where you think, like, if you're reading about it, you kind of go, that just sounds fucking stupid.
Yeah.
And then when you see it, and there's a lot of like old cast members in it as well, like people from Big Trouble in Little China and The Thing, and it's just a fucking great movie. But it seemed to kind of, I remember the promotion for the trailers when I was young, seeing it, and I was like, oh my god, that looks terrifying, I have to see it. I actually ended up entering a remix competition a few years ago with a guy's song, and I ended up turning it into like a John Carpenter-esque. This was like, the fucking song was like EDM shit. I ended up remixing it like John Carpenter music, and I put it to the Prince of Darkness trailer. Obviously fucking didn't even get a mention like with it, but it was just looking at the trailer, it's just dark. People haven't seen it. I think you should, especially for Halloween. It's fucking
sinister.
Yeah.
Creepy.
There's great special effects in it as well, and the whole kind of, the idea of it is like, well, if they're like, what this dark god, this Satan being, what it could be. But yeah, that's my number 6. And what would be your number 5 then? We're getting up near the.
We are indeed. I'm going to try and actually, I know you mentioned I have 11 there. That's because I knew for certain one of mine would be on your list, so I'll put that at my number 1, because I'm sure you're going to have it. So I suppose in keeping, and again, this is not in order, in keeping with the body horror, I suppose, and you mentioned it as well, and John Carpenter, we go with The Thing.
Yeah. I think now, I didn't include The Thing or Aliens in my top 10, which a lot of people would. I think they're science fiction. I guarantee they're horror science fiction, but I kind of thought just to have a list of like traditional horror with it. Now, The Thing is probably my favourite film of all time. It's up there as big. I think it rightly deserves to be on the top of people's number one kind of things with it. It's.
Yes.
I don't think we need to explain the plot to it.
Maybe you do. Group of lads. See, of course, it kind of, again, this encompasses one of my sort of things that I always enjoy in the film. It's a group of lads out in the middle of nowhere. They're trying to rely on themselves, and it's in like the Arctic or the Antarctic, I should say. So it's these icy wastelands. Nobody's coming to help them. They have to deal with it themselves. And there's also a dog in the film as well, which I also enjoy. But yeah, it's just basically a group of guys up there, and there's basically almost, I suppose, an alien force or something like that. They uncover in the
shapeshifter takes on people, so much. People don't know who's who. It's based on like The Thing from Another Planet, the old 50s film.
So everyone is highly suspicious of everyone else because they don't know who The Thing is, and obviously then the body horror bits of it are fairly fucking horrific as well. It is gross and disgusting. People contort into all manner of
they're amazing. Like
spider dogs.
I think Rob Bottin, who was a special effects guy, and it was like maybe 18, 19 at the time. There was I'd imagine it's probably on YouTube now, but like when it came out at first on DVD, when we got the special edition of it, the making of it was brilliant. And of course, and like Rob Bottin, he just fucking slept overnight. You know, he didn't leave the stage. He was like constantly making up just new things. And like he fucking created most of these things from like really weird kind of like, you know, practical effects, and they all still hold up. Even John Carpenter was like saying, saw some of these things that he was doing, and you just go, what the fuck. There was like the bit in it where like they try to give the fucking whatchamacallit, the shock on your man, and it goes through his chest and the arms get bitten off, his head detaches and turns into a spider and walks off, and so one of the guys just goes, what the fuck is and like, I mean, it's just insanity.
And that's the thing, because they're the practical effects, they hold up. It doesn't look this sort of tacky digital sort of like we're not quite there, but actually we'll throw it in anyway. It is properly gross and it's properly horrifying, and you fully believe that this man has suddenly turned into like this weird spider monster.
And as well, it's a tension between you don't know who the Thing is. People years afterwards are saying, oh, you can tell who the Thing is because the Thing always has a shine or has no shine in the eye. John Carpenter said that's bullshit. Like there's no, because it finishes at a point with two people left, and you're kind of like, maybe one of them is the Thing, maybe one's that. And people have been debating this for fucking yonks.
And of course it had the Kurt Russell, of course, huge
Kurt Russell,
in the 80s,
amazing in it,
So, like, I mean, you have him in a load of other sort of, like, you could kind of put, as you said, sci-fi, like, you know, your Escape from New York and LA and all the rest, you could kind of throw those in, sort of horror sci-fi, but it's that big hero where he's sort of like, you're like, this guy knows.
He's kind of a reluctant hero at the same point, but all the people in it, they're all likeable. This is one of the things about The Thing as well, that it
spends time building everyone's character up, so you're genuinely, and
it's about 12 people, is because John Carpenter was saying, like, a lot of times in movies they say you just have to focus on 4 people or a couple of people, because if you go over that,
you can't keep the audience of people,
and John Carpenter was like, no, fuck that, we're going to do 12 Angry Men.
Pretty much.
And he does, like, you get to know all the characters. You might not know all their names, but they're all, you know that their personalities.
You kind of you know how they're going to react. You know what they're thinking, their thought process is. So you kind of, and you can empathise with each
for something
individual.
John Carpenter always does like a minimal score, but he does it with script as well, where it's minimal. People don't need to be fucking having big expositions, kind of like going, oh, we're going to do this and we're going to do that.
They just do it, and that's it. And you follow along.
But you get to know people's. You don't need fucking someone to talk about what they're thinking to understand the character. You can see it, and like, I mean, that's the Thing is a masterclass, and so, and of course it tanked when it came out because it came out against E.T. and it was being compared to E.T. Which is fucking bizarre.
This is not for young children, thank you.
But people,
this is not a Jesus parable.
But people were horrified by it. And the critics were absolutely horrified. They were like, because there is nothing like it, and I don't think there's really been anything like it afterwards.
No. Even when the opening credits are the thing and it's like the burnout comes through. And it's just, even that is just like, ooh, this is going to be good.
It's fucking brilliant. John Carpenter is probably favourite director. Well, hands down.
Well, don't worry, there'll be another film showing up on my list further along.
But it's just amazing. And it is an amazing movie. Kind of it's But going on. So that's your number 5. My number 5 was a toss-up between Nightmare on Elm Street 1 and Nightmare on Elm Street 3.
Which one did you go with?
3. I'm sure people that might be calling, oh God, part 1 is so much better, part 3 is fucking... And 1 is technically better, I suppose. It's scarier. But rewatchability, I think 3. I could look at 3 until the cows come home. When it came out, they kind of brought the fun into Freddy Krueger a bit, or Freddy started becoming who he was. Part 1 is a dark fucking horror movie. Wes Craven directed, and it's classic. It's there for a fucking reason. It's great. But part 3. For me,
Freddy suddenly becomes like Freddy.
Yeah. And as well, the characters that are in it as well. I have trouble relating with any of them from the first one. Some of them you go, yeah, they deserve it. Other than Johnny Depp maybe. But 3, it's all the kids that they're all these kind of people that are in a mental institute.
So that's who you relate with.
Yes, but they were a lot of these kids, they shouldn't be there. It's they're there because they've been dreaming about Freddy.
Exactly,
it kind of builds on the mythology of Freddy, and it's just, I don't know, it's just a fun movie. It's a good movie. The effects are good. The deaths are very creative and imaginative. And when people die in it, you do go, fucking hell. I think as well, because you build up such a relationship with some of these characters, they brought someone back for 4. I killed him off at the start of it. But as well, Heather Langenkamp's character is back in it as well. Kirsty. And when you see it's it's bizarre how she ends up going in after college or doing some course, and that they have
suddenly
her.
She's a doctor.
And it's she's not. But that's probably I suppose that's the least thing that you're worried about. It doesn't make sense of it.
Yes.
But Freddy is Freddy in it, and where there's such lines as welcome to primetime bitch, and I suppose my favourite one was the guy who ends up being the wizard master with the Dungeons and Dragons when they brought that element into it. It's just a really, really good movie.
Yeah, he's almost Scary Terry.
And he is. This is where Scary Terry comes from, where he's like, hey, bitch. But as well, the music too, Dream Warriors by Dokken.
Can't get better than that.
Can't get better. And look at the music video for it, for Dokken, where Freddy shows up, and then when Dokken starts playing, he's grabbing his ears and
as the rest of the audience are as well.
But yes, that would be my 5. So what would be your number 4 then, Laura?
We're getting into the top tier ones here, I suppose, really. So I guess really I'm going to have to go with Poltergeist then, I suppose, as the next one. I don't know if that's on your list or not.
No, it's not, no.
But again, that scared the fucking shit out of me as a kid. Especially the, sort of the fucking, Carrie Ann. I can't remember what her name was, but yeah, she
Carol Ann, was he? I think he was in the second one. Was he in the first one?
Who?
The preacher.
I'm talking about it's the medium I'm talking about,
Oh, right, yeah.
She fucking creeped me out. I don't know why. She was I always suspected she was really kind, and she basically gave herself for the child, but I always suspected that she had ulterior or evil motives, and that she was I don't know why my child brain went there. But again, it made me fucking scared shitless of the telly for a while. Directed
by Toby Hooper. I think there was a lot of interference by Steven Spielberg on it from what's meant to be said, so it's kind of like a Steven Spielberg horror movie. And it's a great film. It's great. They tried to do a remake of it, and it's fucking awful.
I suppose the basic premise is this child gets sucked into the telly by demons.
Yeah, well, it's her father who was in Coach. His name will come to Craig T. Nelson.
Yes.
Who was a big star in the 80s. I think he turned out to be some kind of right wing nut job, or there was something with him a while ago where he basically just vanished. But he was like big star in the 80s. So, and he was like the dad.
Yeah.
The cool dad.
Yeah. And he was the dad.
He was a property developer, and they built houses on an Indian burial ground.
Yes.
So,
the usual.
Yeah, and they were just after moving in. I don't think there was anyone else on the housing estate yet. So it's like suburban thing, and it's a suburban haunted house movie. Whereas like a lot of haunted house movies before that were always like in gothic mansions, or like the Amityville horror. You know, there were creepy houses,
and they were
where this was like a normal fucking suburban house. Had all this horrible shit going on in it, and it's like there's some fucking mad scenes, like the doll. That fucking mentally scared. There was a clown doll in it that like came to life and dragged one of the kids under the bed, and your man's braces coming to life.
Yeah.
There was a load of shit, and then she
really
got sucked into the television near the end of it. But yeah, it's a great movie, and it starts off with like the poltergeist activity. At first, the mother was like, "Oh, this is cool," because moving chairs around, and she, you know, they're kind of
helping her tidy up,
playing with it, and then it gets like sinister.
And then it's like, "I'm gonna fuck you up, bitch." Yeah. But yeah, like I mean, that it has to be up there, really, I suppose, in any kind of horror list of the 80s, because it is a thing. Everyone remembers it. Everyone talks about it. Everyone, I suppose, if they were a kid when they saw it, they were terrified of televisions, and it was terrible because like I loved the telly, and I loved watching films,
and so it doesn't happen. What used to happen was like TV over in Ireland, definitely it'd go off at 11:30. That was
and it would go to the static.
Go to the static. So you were kind of fucking like if you didn't have a video player, you were just you were going to bed at 11:30. It was nearly like all right, look now, it's fuck off.
Yeah, there's no more entertainment. Yes, go to bed like a good person. Yeah, but when the static would come on, you're kind of like, oh my god, it's poltergeist.
And that's like with the poltergeist thing. That's why I don't know if it happened nowadays. If there is TV channels that
I don't think there is even static, because static was the analog thing. Digital would just go black. That's the thing.
I suppose that's the thing. Yeah. But it's a good choice actually. I was considering putting it on. I think it was probably in the honourable mentions. Actually no, it's not.
There you go.
But I was considering. I was like, no. But so that's your number 4. My number 4 would be Near Dark.
Yes.
Directed by Catherine Bigelow, starring Frank Black from Millennium, Lance Henriksen as a vampire in it, and as well. Oh my god, I can't fucking play Cypher in it. It's basically the cast of Aliens, isn't it? Because Catherine Bigelow was married to James Cameron at the time, so Velasquez is like the female vampire in it, and it's I can't think of his fucking name. He's like, oh no, game over, man, game over.
Yes, I know who you're talking about, but asking me about names.
Yeah. Oh my god, I'm so sorry that I have brain damage. But Near Dark, I think, it's like a proper Western Gothic vampire movie where this cowboy...
They're cowboys, essentially.
He ends up getting turned into a vampire by mistake, and they go off... And it's not like the traditional vampires where they're like, oh, let's sleep in coffins and stuff. These are nomadic vampires. They travel around. They're like fucking... outlaws that they travel from town to town, they kill people in it, and they don't like bite their necks, they slash their throats open.
So they can have a proper drink.
They're fucking just brutal killers, really, and he just gets recruited. It's a lot like the Devil's Rejects but with vampires.
I guess so, actually.
And I mean, the only thing that seems to kill him is sunlight. Well, there's other things that kill him as well. Bill Paxton
kills him.
But Bill Paxton plays Cypher in it, one of the vampires but it's just it's a Tangerine Dream due to the soundtrack to it as well. It's so underrated. You fucking rarely hear people talking about Near Dark. It's fantastically shot. Catherine Bigelow's after winning Oscars, since she's a fucking fantastic director. It's very...
Was she Black Hawk? She was Black Hawk Down, or she was one of those? No, it was The Hurt Locker.
The Hurt Locker, but she did that thing as well. I think it was SEAL Team 6 it was called, but it was about the she's after doing...
Didn't she do Point Break?
Yeah, Point Break as well, yeah. Like, she's got her own stuff, great director. But like, Near Dark seems to be one of her movies that people don't talk about. But if you look at it, it's... even the script too, like there are certain lines in it where when your woman's talking to your man at the start and they're staring at the stars and she's like, oh, do you see that star? By the time that light gets here, I'll still be here but you won't, and he's like, fucking what? But even the way that they deal with it's just...
It's very, kind of, as I say, like Western, kind of like a dramatic sort of lonesome.
Yeah.
I don't know, I can't even explain what I'm looking for. It's not quite Americana, kind of. It's just got that kind of like...
It's American,
feel.
Gothic American. You know, and it's believable. You kind of go, well, fuck, if there were vampires out there, this is more believable than... say Interview with the Vampire or something like that, where these are just fucking horrible bastards that they enjoy killing and they enjoy torturing people, but as well they're obviously going to just pick people off in like small towns where no one will know and that these people are dead or like that. And it is like Lance Henriksen as like the patriarch of the vampire clan. It's like when he's talking, they don't give away too much of their histories, but just enough where you kind of go, fuck, it'd be really cool to know like that he was around during the Civil War.
What was he up to then? Like,
and I think the person that turned, or the creature that turned him into it was like a proper vampire, like a Nosferatu style thing. But yeah, totally underrated vampire movie, I think, and one of my favourite movies of all time as well. Yeah,
good. And you have to have an old vampire film.
Yeah.
There.
So now, what would be your number 3 then, Laura?
So number 3, I'm going to break up two that are quite similar. Yeah, so I'm going to do Predator as my number 3.
See, I think Predator is a great film as well, but I would not consider it a horror. Like,
But what is it then? Is it sci-fi? Is it action? Is it thriller?
Sci-fi action, I would consider it. But like, you consider it horror. Like, what do you find so horrific about the Predator?
The laugh.
Hey, Billy!
But it is.
I said my girlfriend's got a big pussy. I said, it's like the Echo.
But yes, no, we'll go back to the actual. Like, I mean, it's a terrifying, horrifying like premise that like there's just these like hunter aliens out there that like kill people for sport, and it's like they're invisible for starters, and they have these fucking like terrible vagina dentata mouths, and they look like fucking things out of what was that film John Travolta was in? That's how the
Battlefield Earth.
Yeah, with all the fucking
the dreadlocks.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it always reminded me of that. Obviously the other way around because Predator came out first. But I mean, it's I think it's terrifying as fuck when Arnie gets down to it, and it's just him against a predator out in the middle of the sweaty jungle, and like he's down to sort of like. He can't hide because this thing has fucking heat vision and all the rest, so he's smearing himself in mud. The people are, like, I mean, at the start, they're horrible deaths as well. Like, there's people basically skinned alive and hung upside down.
Yeah.
And again, I would have been young seeing this, and it's kind of like, I'm living in the country, and I was fucking like, I'm not going...
The Predator was going to come for you in the country.
I know, it's just there's a lot of forests around. I used to go walking in forests, and it's like, am I fuck walking in that forest?
If you weren't carrying a heavy machine gun, I'm sure you would have been fine. Like.
But it is, you just say, the way your mind works, you're like, well, I'm not going into that forest again. There might be predators in there, and fuck that. Like,
see, totally different. Kind of like when me and my friends would have seen this when it came out, looked at it fucking over and over and over again, but we used to go out and play. And it's like, you're the predator this time.
I'll be Arnie, I'll shoot you.
And like getting the machine guns out of the pound shop, like the M16s.
Well, so you have to remember, I was an only child in the middle of the country as well, so like my pals were like, right, come on dogs, we go into the forest and go for a walk. So like my mind was very, very overactive when I was a kid, so like I was like, oh, I guess there's predators in the forest then. I was like, oh shit.
But yeah, I love Predator.
I mean, it's, again, if we go back to the whole thing of like, what's a film you throw on a Friday night? If you gave me that film and said you have to watch this every Friday night for the next year, I'd be like, okay.
Yes, Mac.
Study this. Study the masculine.
But Predator it's amazing. Like I just would not consider it horror in any shape or form. Like, it's too cool. But
horror can be cool.
Yeah, but like, I mean, even though like the new one, Prey, and they have, it's not a sequel or a prequel to Prey, but they're doing a sequel to Prey as well. So they're doing another one in another time period. And I think there's talk that like Fede Alvarez might be doing a Predator versus Aliens at some stage as well, because on the back of Romulus doing so well.
I see that. I was kind of, will I include Alien in this? But I was like, no, I'll throw Predator in because it's cool.
I think like
Alien is probably closer to pure horror.
Yeah, Aliens is amazing. Like, I mean, I like Aliens is great. We must rewatch it at some stage, but I would not consider that as well as horror.
I know you're more sci-fi.
I think it's action sci-fi. With it, like there's some.
So I suppose they have something like, okay, right, just to take.
I think the original Alien film is horror.
What about an Event Horizon or something like that?
Event Horizon is horror. Yeah, that's a haunted house film in space.
But how do you define, like, why is Alien not like a haunted house in space with fucking monsters?
The original Alien would be, but Aliens, there's too much action in it, and there's
horror can't have action.
Yeah, horror can have action, but it's the way it's done. Like, Aliens is too much kind of like gung-ho, kind of like, oh yeah, there's not like tension there, and even with the music. And whereas with the original Alien, there's that tension there. It's like, oh, what's preying on people coming out of the dark, and whereas like in Aliens, you know what it is. It's just like, it's a bug hunt. Like, that's what it is. It's a bug hunt. There's no real tension in it, and when they...
Well, would you not just think then Predator, the start of the Predator film, where you don't know what it is or what's happening, or people are just being like fucking horribly killed in the...
Not really. Jungle, but then you could say something like I don't know, Missing in Action is a horror film because of like what they do, it's just like there's sci-fi elements with it. Okay. But so that was your number 3. My number 3 is a horror film. It's Evil Dead 2.
I know there is a horror film. Alright.
Evil Dead 2, I think probably the best out of the Evil Dead franchise. And the Evil Dead franchise has no bad movies in it and no bad TV shows. From the one TV show with Ash vs. Evil Dead. It's like there's no bad Evil Dead things.
Well, that was one that would have been on my list, but I knew you'd have Evil Dead on yours. Yeah.
But Evil Dead 2, it's just fucking like one of the best sequels ever to anything, because it kind of... No, that was
3, wasn't it?
Yeah,
sorry.
Evil Dead 2 is kind of a remake of the first one, but it's
funnier.
It's not funny, a lot gorier, but like over the top EC horror gore. Where I think because they had like wrongly, the original Evil Dead was put into the video nasty territory, whereas thank God years afterwards people were like, look, it's actually an art film. Like, I mean, like, look at what Raimi did with the different shots and things no one else was doing. Still no one shoots a film like Sam Raimi does. And Evil Dead 2, they were just like, well, look, we want to show loads of gore and stuff, but instead of having like red blood, we'd have like cartoons. So it was, I think from the censors they were told that, so say if blood pissing out of someone is green, then for some reason in the 80s they were like, it's fine.
It's okay, it's not blood.
But it just built up the whole thing. Bruce Campbell came into himself as a fucking big star with this, and Ash stick, because Ash in the first one was very much, he wasn't like what Ash became. Yes,
he wasn't. Now, Ash was never a hero, but Ash in the first one was very much like a bit of a pansy.
Yeah, and he's meant to, because you don't think he's going to survive, and you don't think he's going to, whereas in this, I think they bring in other people as well, and they elaborate on the whole Kandarian demon things, and there's just more fun monsters, and they had money. Like, they didn't have any money when they were doing the first one.
Now, I'll go back to explain that I have this weird blindness with films where I can't, if something is in a franchise, it's one big film to me, so like 1, 2 and 3 I can't differentiate. Is this the one with the windmill?
No, that's part 2 as well. Or part 3. Sorry. Okay. Part 2, what they do is they basically have they kind of forget about part 1 and they kind of redo the first part where it's him and Linda just go off out to the cabin in the woods, and Linda, he plays a tape and it brings about the Evil Dead. Linda gets possessed and he ends up having to kill her, and he buries her fucking... he cuts her head off and all that shit, and sure, of course, she comes back with it. So it's the next day where he's in it starts off with him after being possessed by one of the Deadites, and then he's trapped in the cabin, and other people come along who had the cabin before. So it was like the family that had all the stuff about the Kandarian demons. So it gets into the folklore about that they were archaeologists and they left it there, and the guy that was like the professor ended up killing his wife Henrietta, and she buried her in the basement. So it's all just but it keeps amping up. So when it fucking just gets into it straight away with him being possessed, and then it gets what every kind of say act it builds up, and to the end of it where it's like fucking all out. You get to see what like you never get to see behind the camera, and like there's portals, and it's just batshit crazy. Whereas a lot of films, they might blow their load in the first act. With this, you kind of go fucking, and then like the second act, it's like, oh my god, now there's more people and there's more demons and more fucking mad shit. And then the third act, it's like, oh my god,
it just keeps going.
Yeah, it's a horror masterclass and a comedy horror masterclass as well. I fucking lost count of how many times I looked at The Evil Dead 2. Must look at it again, actually. Then I'm coming up to the last or top two. So what's your number two?
Right, as I said, I'm not putting these in order of like, oh my god, this is that. Like, I mean, because technically this would be my number one horror film. But my actual number one is what I would watch over and over and over again on a Friday night for horror. So my number two I'll have is The Fog.
The Fog.
Another John Carpenter sort of.
Fog, yeah, it is. And like, I mean, Fog was a weird one, and it's a ghost story, and it's like it starts off like a ghost story where they're telling ghost stories on the beach. I think is what like it played in with me. So like where we are in Ireland, there's a lot of fog.
Yes. And again, this is something actually I suppose that is kind of a common thread with an awful lot of these. A lot of these scared the shit out of me when I was a kid, to the point where like if it was a foggy night I'm like fucked, I'm going outside.
That's why we grew up close to the coast. You would have been out in a place called Dunmore a lot when you were younger, which is very much like
it is, Sea Point, is it?
Sea Point, Sea Haven or something, I can't remember. The town in the fog. So it kind of has that sense of kind of fucking this.
Yeah, this could easily happen. Yeah, exactly. And there's I suppose a crossover as well with the sort of the shipwreck. There's a lot of shipwrecks around Ireland, old shipwrecks. There's a lot of lighthouses around Ireland, and there's a lot of churches around Ireland as well, where you could easily picture.
Had a lot of corruption.
That's what I was going to say. You could easily picture the local community or the priest just deciding to be bollockses and sort of ruin things for people.
But The Fog is a weird one as well because they had, as in terms of how it was put together as an actual movie, because they ended up going back and reshooting gory scenes for it, because originally John Carpenter wanted to be a PG thing or 12, said he just wanted like a ghost story thing, a simple ghost story. And when they went to the studio were like, no, it needs more gore and kind of like, so they ended up having to go and shoot the people in the fog killing people, so it was like, so it fitted in with slasher movies.
There was a lot of slash hooks as well actually involved in it, but like I mean again it kind of it hits on a few points that I always like in horror films. It's a community that are basically, they are kind of cut off because it's the fog rolls in and you can't get past it. They're isolated, they've got to do it for themselves. And there's like shipwrecks and sailors and underwater.
It's really good. It's really scary. It's terrified the shit out of me when I was younger. I think it might have been one of the first horror movies I ever saw, because they seem to show it on RT a lot. And it's fucking fantastic movie. Great,
and even just
story.
The soundtrack as well. Again, you've got your John Carpenter-esque score, sort of simple but super effective.
But it's the whole thing as well. It's like nearly what you don't see in the fog. You get to see certain bits and pieces.
But again, it's the whole thing of like, because you don't know, you can't see what's in the fog for the most part, so you're fucking terrified as to what's going on.
And it's only at the end when you find out what the actual why it's happening. And you kind of go, oh.
Yeah, so the baddies are not actually the baddies in this. Because you suddenly understand why the ghosts are the way they are, kind of thing. You're like, I totally get it, lads.
But it's a good ghost story. Like, it's really, really good. So my number two would be very different. I'd imagine this is on no one else's top 10, let alone number two when they're talking about horror movies. But it's Trick or Treat.
Yes, I do enjoy that.
Yeah, there's a couple of films called Trick or Treat. This one, it's about a kid called Ragman who's into heavy metal, being bullied in school. His hero, Sammy Kerr, which is like a fucking shock rocker from the 80s, kills himself. He dies in a fire, and he fucking
his last record was released, basically,
and he plays it backwards, and he raises Sammy Kerr from the dead, who's like, let's kill all these assholes in your high school. And it's just a weird film. It's a bully revenge movie at its core. It's very like Christine or any of those things. Yeah, you've got
the outsider, the misfit, who's always getting sneered at and bullied, and suddenly he's got this supernatural power that helps him become the cool kid that goes around killing all these bullies.
And it's a heavy metal movie. Yeah. Like, I mean, Sammy Kerr, the guy that played him, I think it was Mark Curry was his name. He died, I think, from cancer or something a few years later. But he was like a dancer or ballet dancer or something like that, or maybe
so
something
he had
like
a real strange way of moving.
Yeah, he was fucking brilliant in it. Like, I mean, Sammy Kerr is cool, and the music is really good in it. The music's done by Fastway. Gene Simmons is in it. Ozzy is in it.
Yeah.
It's very much kind of saying something about the satanic panic in the 80s. Yeah. The main character is Skippy from Family Ties. It's a fucking great. It's a fun movie. It's a really, really fun movie. It's got a lot of rewatchability to it.
Yeah.
And you do feel sorry for some of the characters in it.
But I mean, it does. Like, I mean, I think every kid at some stage, even if they're popular or not, they do feel a bit like the outcast at some stage. And you do kind of go, yeah, it'd be fucking brilliant. Like,
yeah,
if I could just show those people.
Now, whereas in Christine, he kind of goes, yeah, this is great, and he embraces it, and he gets possessed by Christine. I don't know. It's the film of Christine is different from the book insofar. I think Stephen King always said that it was like, he gets possessed by Christine and like the car, you know. Whereas in this Ragman, it's like, no, I can't be going around fucking killing people. I don't want to be doing this fucking shit, you know. So it turns into that 80s kind of,
how do I stop things from going terribly wrong?
Yeah, and he turns into the hero. And it's I really like it. Soundtrack is brilliant.
Yeah.
And it's just like I had it on VHS when I was younger. I think my sister bought it for me. I never saw it. And she bought it for me when it came. Well, I don't know where the fuck she got.
She obviously just knew you well. It's like heavy metal horror. There you go.
And I started up from when I was maybe 8 or 9 or something like that, and I was like, oh my god, this is the best thing ever.
That's actually the thing. A lot of these films would probably not translate well if a young person was looking at them nowadays, because they wouldn't have any clue what a fucking LP was like, or a record. You know, they'd be like, how do you play a streaming track backwards, like, you know? So there's a lot of, I suppose, nostalgia in that kind of thing.
That's the thing, and as well, I suppose the whole thing with it, it's not like horror. There's not any. I don't think there's any point in this film where anyone would be scared with it.
Well, when Gene Simmons pops up.
yeah.
But it's supernatural elements. It's like, you know, somebody resurrects from he goes, as far as I can remember as well, he goes into the speakers at once.
Yeah, he does, yeah. There's no sense to it. Yeah. He turns into electricity near the end of it, and you're just like, what?
Fair enough. Yeah. Off you go. Yeah, shock rocker.
But it's got like elements of Carrie in it, I suppose.
And actually that was something I was actually disappointed that I couldn't include that on the list, because it's like in the 70s.
It was 79, was it, or 78?
That was it, yeah. Again, just another Stephen King film.
Salem's Lot. Yeah. But then in Salem's Lot, is that a movie or is it? It's a TV show, I suppose, really more now. But then now we're at our number 1.
Yes. And like I said, I had a spare one on my list, which I was going to have up high, but I know you'll have it on your list as well. So my number 1 will be Terminator.
I see, again, would not consider Terminator.
I know you wouldn't. I know you wouldn't. But again, it's the whole thing of like rewatchability. If there's 2 films that you could probably give, 3 films, sorry, Terminator 2, and Die Hard. And if you gave me the 3 of those films and said you can never watch that never again, I'd be like, grand job. I'll watch the 3 of these every single night. So Terminator, I can't think of it more horrific as well than like this fucking unstoppable killer machine that just comes after you and comes after you. Like T2 blew it up to a big thing, but like, I mean, this is proper horror. This is like the end of the world.
He had the idea, wasn't it, from a nightmare that he had a fever dream, wasn't it? And he woke up and he wrote it down. James Cameron, that is, and that's where
it's like
the idea of Terminator came from.
The thought of like this thing sent from the future to kill you. This like you know, sort of, you know, Sarah Connor thing. Like, you know, she's just getting chased down with this unstoppable machine that is just fucking terrifying.
Soundtrack is brilliant too. Yeah. Was it Brad Field? He did the. Oh my god!
What?
I don't have Fright Night anywhere on me fucking thing.
I thought you did Fright Night there as well.
I should have. I forgot about it.
we can put it in our honourable mentions, or you can put it up at your top. You can split your top 1.
Oh yeah, it'll be in the honourable mentions.
Yeah.
But I think, oh god, I can't believe I forgot Fright Night.
There's a load I left out because I was like, I'm sure Wayne put this on his list.
I'd probably take out Friday the 13th to throw Fright Night in there. Fuck, I can't believe it. It's a thing with the brain. The same with the Reanimator. I didn't even have Reanimator down in the honourable mentions. Totally forgot about it.
Shame on you. Absolute shame on you. But yeah, back to Terminator.
Oh yeah, sorry.
It's just like, it's this, like, the thought that there's this cyborg fucking skeletal robot underneath like human flesh, surrounded by human flesh, that slowly gets peeled off.
It was a fantastic premise.
Jesus
for
Christ.
The time. Like,
Arnold Schwarzenegger was fucking terrifying.
Yeah, he was. Yeah, the whole thing. And Lance Henriksen went for the part of Terminator originally. And he went, like, he pops up in it as a police detective, doesn't he?
I think so, yeah.
But he, like, I remember it's like one of these famous stories that he went to the audition for it and he put, like, tinfoil on his teeth. And James Cameron was like, this guy's fucking insane. And I think that's where he gave the recommendation for him to Catherine Bigelow as well for
it. Yeah, he was like, this guy is nuts. I like him.
But how different it would have been. But Arnold Schwarzenegger, like, perfect for it. He because as well, he couldn't really act at the time.
Yeah, so you believed him as a robot. Yeah, that's it. But I mean, he looked like a robot, a human flesh spread over a robot skeleton. You know, when the jaw fucking appears and it's just all this shiny silver chrome and like, red eye.
People forget because like how big a film it turned out to be and how big like Terminator 2 was. It was a relatively small film. It didn't have a big budget.
It wasn't. Yeah, like I mean, you look back at sort of some of the special effects were a bit shocky, whereas like they were showing the future and all the lasers going pew pew. But like you see that fucking the robot, the Terminator foot crushing a human skull and a tank rolling over it, and you kind of go, that's fucking a bit terrifying now. That's a very bleak future. And to be honest with you, we're fucking headed that way. ChatGPT is taking over.
I think AI is fucking. This is the thing where people, AI are going to take over. It's not because people are sick of it already, and they're just like, this is stupid. What fucking good is this shit? Like,
I know, but we're headed towards the sort of a thing where like God's going.
But I will give it to you. Like Terminator is probably more of a horror movie, I think, than Predator.
No, it is totally sci-fi as well, but it's horror sci-fi in my head. But it would be a film.
It's like the way it's shot.
I'm not going to do some worthy like horror film over Terminator. Like I think Terminator every night.
I think Terminator reminds me a lot of Blade Runner the way it was shot. As well. You know, it's got that cyberpunk aesthetic, that grim dark future thing with it. Whereas like 2 kind of just amped it up. Like Terminator 2 was like to Terminator as Aliens is to Alien. Like James Cameron himself. I'm on it.
But I mean, it's terrifying, it's horrifying. And like at this stage as well, it's not the Sarah Connor that we know that's all like well equipped. She's just some random poor woman that is just getting fucking brutalized and like trying to get away from this monster that's like tracking her down to kill her. Like, you know?
And no matter what she does, like, it is the thing.
Keeps on fucking popping back up, and he's like, Jesus Christ.
Yeah, I would never thought that it would have spawned the sequels that it did, and like obviously Terminator 3 fucking awful. Terminator 4, the one Christian Bale, could have been good.
That was alright.
I think what they do with the Terminator franchise is you kind of like even the new one, Dark Fate or Dark Salvation or whatever it was, that was quite a good film. I don't think it could look at it like Terminator 2 over and over and over again, but it's just stay with the fucking pick what, and that Genesis I quite enjoyed that as well, but it's like stay with that fucking storyline. You have to give it a few films maybe for it. No one is going to, no matter what you do with Terminator, no one's going to fucking like it at this. It's just such a beloved franchise. Like with Terminator 2, it's like what happened with Aliens. Once these films got to a certain point, you can't go back. You're after peaking. You're after peaking. Like I mean, Alien 3 is a great film. It could have been even better if they had to go with the original script. But compared to 2, it's a piece of shit, and that's what happened to people. Like and then 4 is kind of. But you know, it's just like what happened with Predator 2. Predator 2 is an amazing film, but people are like, oh, Arnie's not in it, and it's not like, you know, it's so. But good number 1, I suppose. I'm going to have a joint number 1 because I'm fucking stupid. So I'm going to put Lost Boys and Fright Night up there because, being quite honest, I don't think I could pick between the 2.
They're both vampire as well. So,
and both of them reinvented the fucking vampire franchise in the 80s, one before the other. Like Fright Night totally reinvigorated. Like I mean, like the vampire being Jerry Dandridge. People, and like even in the film they got like a vampire called Jerry.
Yeah, exactly.
Because vampire movies before that were like Dracula and Gothic Castles.
Yeah, it was Christopher Lee and stuff like that. Yeah, it was all very haughty, like, you know.
Yeah, and even Salem's Lot would have been, you know, it's, and then it was. Fright Night was cool. It's funny. It's fucking the special effects in it are amazing. The cast in it are great. Roddy McDowall as the Peter Cushing, kind of like, you know, fucking what was it, Peter Lee or Peter? Yeah, I think it was Vincent Lee, Vampire Hunter. Yeah. I can't remember. Fucking, I should remember. I'm getting tired now. Peter Vincent. Yes. And the remake of it was actually really good as well with fucking Colin Farrell. He's hilarious in it. Even though
he's a good vampire.
Even where he's like coming on to fucking your man's mother in front of him, and he's saying it to him kind of, or what, he says something horrific about kind of like, you know, women are just begging for it or something like that about his mother, and he's just like,
you are a true monster.
And Colin Farrell was saying, I want to play him as one of these guys, and he's just like a shark.
Proper sleaze.
But like Fright Night, fucking brilliant, classic kind of thing, and it's based on kind of like nearly a Hitchcockian thing of like
no one believes the child when he sees all
he's looking out his window and he sees it, and it's so clever with that whole thing. The second one I love as well. The second one died. I think there was some weird distribution kind of things, or Paramount was like in their death throes at the time, so it never really got publicised that it was coming out, and it never really got promoted, and it just kind of died. It was really hard to get. I remember I could never get it when I was younger. And then even, I think maybe you can get it on DVD now, but for fucking donkey's ears, you could really only pirate it. And
yeah,
that was the only way you could see the fucking thing. And it's a great film as well, but it killed the it could have been an amazing franchise, but it just kind of went against itself. It's going to come back though, I think. But yeah, the other, my number one, Lost Boys.
Yes, which I had on my list, but I knew you'd have it right up there at the top as well, so we can both talk about it.
Yeah, if you haven't seen Lost Boys, like to any podcast that we've done, I think this was one of the few podcasts where it was like, I'm not going to do fucking episode. Nearly every first episode is on Lost Boys. When we're doing a music podcast,
you managed to fucking shoehorn it.
Yeah, it was about Lost Boys soundtrack. It's, can't say enough good things about it. I don't think it's dated badly at all because it captured the 80s essence perfectly with it. Corey Haim, Corey Feldman in it, Kiefer Sutherland, one of his first leads.
Yeah, and he was fantastic in it. So creepy, just so fucking terrifying, but sort of almost relatable as well.
Yeah.
In a weird way, because again, Lost Boys, Peter Pan, like these kids were sort of, And
it's like the story to making of it is great as well. Joel Schumacher, probably one of Joel Schumacher's best films. But it's like over the top. It's like it was so cool. Anyone who knows Face Off, one of the judges on it, V. Neal, she did the costumes for it and some of the special effects.
Not the Nicolas Cage
film. And it's just it's quintessential 80s horror.
And it's like fucking Santa Clara, isn't it? And like, I mean, it's, it's just, it captures this weird seaside town carnival vibe so well. It's like the closest we'd have a more, so it's not like, quite like that.
It's kind of like the Goonies meets vampires.
Thing. Yeah.
Like, that is what it is. Yeah. And like, where like these kids, the Lost Boys themselves, it's like, when I was younger, I didn't pick up on the Peter Pan thing because I didn't really like Peter Pan, so I didn't know about Lost Boys when I was like, this would have came out 87, so it would have been about 8 or 9. So I wasn't familiar with like Lost Boys or the lore of Peter Pan. And it's like originally it was going to be like Peter Pan as vampires, like the guys from but they just, Schumacher turned it into this fucking really, really cool movie about like
you got your sax man wearing his chains and his fucking knickers.
But there's a couple of documentaries about the making of it now, or the history of it and stuff. There's a book, I don't know if you can get it anymore, about like the making of Lost Boys. It was one of the funniest books that ever, the story, but like one of the stories about the sax man. It's cracking. He used to be the sax player with Tina Turner, and he used to do a load of things live. So when they offered him the role, he was like, oh, fucking great. So he came along to it, how he looks in the movie with like this
with massive fucking heavy iron chains with these weird mullety type hairstyles.
So they were shooting the concert scene for it at night. So they invited kids from the town, and like Santa Carla was considered kind of a rough town, like the way it is.
It's portrayed in it.
And like apparently like people were just fucked out of their heads. The concert went on for hours and hours. So he went up to the director, or Schumacher, at one stage, and he was like, fucking hell, he was like, can we stop for a bit? Kind of like, I can't play, my cock ring is kind of like tear. And he was like, fucking what? And he was like, oh, I got my knob pierced especially for the film, kind of like, and he's like, who's going to see it? But it was like, because of the tight pants that Ron was chafing, he's fucking taking all that. So there's loads of fucking stories like that, really fun stories with it, and like
fun stories about pierced penises,
and drugs, and it was like the age of Kiefer Sutherland was apparently writing off, not like to Jason Patrick. He took the
role seriously, method acting,
and he was like, I think when the film started, it was Jason Patrick's birthday. And Kiefer Sutherland got him a cake with his picture on it.
His own picture?
No, with like Jason Patrick's picture on it. And he went to cut the cake and he cut it across his throat.
Alright, fucking sinister.
So there was like,
But it's like Lost Boys is
there's not
80s.
much else you can like. I mean, again, harken back to what I've been saying throughout this whole thing, like things that terrified me as a child. That whole scene on the fucking railway bridge where they drop into the fog. Yeah. Oh my god, I had nightmares about that forever. Like, Jesus, I still have nightmares about that. The making
of it, they talk about that, and they all got really fucked up because they were hanging there for hours.
Honestly, it's just
and they didn't have like supportive back pieces on and all this stuff that they would now. But as well, there's like you can't. Lost Boys, for as cool as it is and as nice as it is, when they show them being vampires and kills, there's like fucking brutal scene in it that apparently nearly killed everyone in the thing, because it was like the second director they got to do that, and they shot it on a sound stage, and like in it there's like bodies getting torn up and all the bodies get thrown onto like this bonfire, but it was like latex bodies, so like they started doing it, they didn't consider, so it nearly poisoned everyone. So apparently when they were making the film they were hated, because there's another bit where they go and kill the vampires and you don't see all the flies yet, so they got millions of flies apparently. And then it was like you can't even see them on the camera, but it was like the Warners, the Warners lost party for fucking. It was in the summer, so for months there was like hundreds of flies on every other set. You know, so.
I wonder, do they have a title on the credits for Fly Wrangler?
There is.
Is there? Fly Wrangler.
Yeah, I think it is. Yeah, and I think there's a Maggot Wrangler as well, because of that kind of like you're eating name, maggots.
Maggot Wrangler.
But yeah, that's my number one. Lost Boys.
Absolutely. Well, it would be, as I said, it's up there with it for me as well. But I knew you'd have it on your list.
Yeah. So
honourable mentions that you want to have?
Honourable mentions. Quite
if you want to do a kind of a comedy horror kind of a thing, oh no, it's probably not in the 80s though. The Frighteners.
No, that would be 90s definitely. Well, I run through them and you can say whether you agree or disagree with them. Ghostbusters.
Absolutely, 100%.
I think it could have easily been in the top 10.
But I kind of. This is a weird thing. I have this thing in my head of 80s films where like there's a genre of 80s films that are just the 80s, and it's like that, and Indiana Jones, and it's just it's the 80s. It's not even horror, it's not comedy, it's not that, it's just the 80s.
Ghostbusters is just, and like it's a great franchise as well. Demons, I'm pretty sure Demons is in the 80s. It's presented by Dario Argento. I think Luci Fulci might have directed it. But Demons, I could look at that over and over again. It's just fucking mental. It's like pure, it doesn't make any sense whatsoever. Where it's like in the cinema with these demons that end up infecting the world through the movie. It's just pure Italian fucking insanity. Hitcher with Rutger Hauer, I think is fucking. We went looking back at that a couple of years ago for another podcast, and I hadn't seen it since the 80s, and all of a sudden I was like, oh my god, that's a great movie. That's fucking really, really good. The Church, Le Chaisa. That's another Italian fucking. Remember they were trapped in the church, and it's like Templars or something like that created a trap to capture some demon in it, and they all start getting possessed and killed by these monsters. And that's like just over the top. Life Force, space vampires, basically, and
vampires in space.
I don't know how else to explain it. Waxworks.
Yes, I suppose. Yeah, that was kind of horrendous. Yeah.
Great. American Werewolf in London as well. Halloween 3 is probably my favourite out of the Halloween movies, other than the Rob Zombie ones.
Yes.
I don't really like Michael Myers. I've always preferred Jason.
Yeah.
The Rate, Charlie Sheen, Revenge movie. That's really good. And Eric Roberts is in it as well, I think. The Monster Squad. It was really hard for me not to put the Monster Squad in the top 10. And another Wes Craven movie, Shocker. Remember Shocker? It's Skinner from the X-Files. Plays a convicted murderer who dies on death row, but because he drinks snake venom, it comes back as electricity.
Again, this is a common
Harold
thing with
Pinker, I think his name was, or something.
Coming back as electricity. Like, Jesus, there's an awful lot of films that had that.
And Megadeth did soundtrack for it.
Okay.
Yeah. And then
my brain just converted that to Megatron, and I was like, what?
Yes, Megatron from the Transformers is really.
Yes.
But Warlock as well. I really like the Warlock franchise.
Yeah.
Julian Sands.
Yes. Poor Julian Sands.
It would have been.
God.
Yeah.
But I'm sure there's
honourable mentions the whole way through, the likes of Pet Cemetery and Christine, all those Stephen King type films. So,
and Reanimator. I mean, it's really hard to pick. There's so many good films. Like you could do top 50. Like for people who like the 80s horror movies, there's like In Search of Darkness. It's a 3-part. Fucking, I think it covers nearly every 80s horror movie in fairly depth.
Yeah, and of course, we're not going into even sort of the usual, like Child's Play or any of those kind of
forgot
films,
Child's Play as well.
or any of the sort of the video nasties, even like that, Bad Taste, any of these kind of ones. There's a lot. That's
it's so hard. Like there is like, I would, if you're into 80 horror movie, go and look at it. It'll be like, I think. They're 4 hours each of the things, and there's extended versions of them out there as well.
It's a commitment to actually sit down and watch.
So if you do want to kind of, because there's so many there's ones that I can't even remember the names. There was like, I think like the fucking Witchboard series is weird. There is fucking whatchamacallit. Oh, is it?
Did we miss out on Phantasm, by the way?
Phantasm would have been the 70s. Phantasm 2 came out in the late 80s.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Which is, but there's just so many, like, you can't get into them all. So look, if you've listened for the hour and a half, and if you have any suggestions, leave a comment below. What's your top 10? Let us know what your top 10 is. And if you agree or disagree with us, let us know as well. In a nice way. Just don't be like, I'm gonna fucking come and kill you, fucking stupid bastard, you forgot to put Fright Night in at the end.
Just in a polite, cordial, civil manner. Nice.
And as well, look, what's probably the handiest for yourself, it's not a selling point, but you should maybe subscribe if you want to stay up to date with like the next couple of weeks.
That comes out.
Well, the next week will be the 90s. We're going to be doing the same thing for top 10 of the 90s, which I have a funny feeling there won't be as many honourable mentions. And then we'll be doing the two. So all Halloween season. We'll have this.
Spooky.
Yeah. So, thank you for listening. And until next week, goodbye.